Gates are a processor that I try to avoid when I can, but sometimes they're necessary, and sometimes you need them because your situation doesn't allow for fixing the problem at the source. You gotta just roll with what you got, or there's a stylistic component that you enjoy the sound of gated drums, or you just want everything to be super quiet when stuff isn't on. So I'm gonna show you how I gate the drums so that you can see it in action, and we'll look at some of the additional features beyond just basic gating on an individual channel. So as we're looking at the signal flow on the board, you can see here on the fat channel, there's input, gate, comp, and EQ. We've looked at in previous videos how we can switch the order of the compressor and equalizer, but the gate section, which could also be an expander, comes after the input section. This is important to note because it comes after the high pass filter. So the high pass filter comes before the gate no matter what, and that's regardless of what you're doing with the equalizer section. So the gate, we're trying to push down the noise or the unwanted signal so that just the signal that we want comes through and not a lot of extra stuff goes on. You could put this on other input channels that maybe have a little bit of background noise, but if you don't get the attack and release time and the threshold set up just right on those, they can be a little bit distracting. Let's just look at what's happening here with our gate on, say, the kick drum. There's not usually a lot of extra noise with the kick drum if you can get the microphone inside the drum itself, but we'll take a look anyway. So here we can see on our graph, if we turn this on, we can see on our graph, this is our graph of inputs versus outputs. So inputs go along the bottom. If we have increased input level, that's what we're going to see there. Increased output level is going to be on our y-axis, or why aren't you getting louder, right? That was kind of dumb and unnecessary. So the line here is showing us what's going on with our signals level dynamically. If the input level is below the point of the threshold, and we can adjust the threshold here or with the knob over here, either one of those can control it. You can see that our output level is going to be down very far. I don't know, I don't want to necessarily say zero or silent, but we're not opening up that gate until after the signal, the input level, gets to this point. Right now you can see that that's at negative 45 dB. All right, so as long as the signal is below that point, nothing's going to come through. The range is how much we're going to turn it down when it's below the threshold. So if I select range and I turn that down, you can see over here on the other meter how much it's turned down right now, right? So the range is the maximum amount that we're going to turn it down. This meter is showing how much gain is being reduced or how much we're turning it down at the moment. Now the attack and the release time are going to say how quickly are we going to respond with our gain change after the input breaches the threshold. So as the input level goes up above the threshold, how fast are we opening up that signal level? Are we going to open up instantly? Or are we going to take a little bit to open that door? The release time is the opposite. After the signal level goes back down below the threshold, how long are we going to take until we reach that maximum gain reduction, or how much we're turning it down with our gate with the range control? Now there's also the option to use an expander. The expander is going to change the way that it opens up, or that ramp up to our open level and our ramp back down to our closed level. So an expander, you can see the line changes a little bit right here, right? So the expander is not giving us as much range, or our range control doesn't matter anymore with the expander on. You know, you can see it's making that change as we have it on gate mode, but expander, it's kind of automatic. We're closing it down at a ratio, or we're turning it down at a ratio below the threshold. So if the signal goes way down, we're going to turn it way down. And if it's down just a little bit, we're going to turn it down some. This can feel gentler, and you can see, again, the range does nothing here when we're in expander mode. For right now, we're going to keep it in gate mode and try to listen to it. Mute everything except just the kick drum. We'll demonstrate on other drums too, but we're just going to go straight through the line and hear what we can hear when we're adding the gate. So we can see here on the gate, it's staying open and it's not really closing very much. In between the hits, it's not coming down, right? So this shows me that our release time is quite slow. If we turn down this release, it's actually turning it down in between the notes. And maybe our threshold is a little bit too low too, so. Okay, so now we've turned up our threshold, so just the very peak of that kick drum is popping through and triggering the gate to open. Now as we slow our release time down, the gate will stay open a little bit longer. Again, super fast, it's going to close really fast. Super slow, it's not really coming back down after. You can hear some of the cymbals through the kick drum microphone. And in a live situation, you're probably not hearing that a whole lot. Nobody else listens to your kick drum in solo mode, so don't be so concerned about every little detail of what's coming through your kick drum mic. You want the kick drum to be the main thing. Don't focus on getting every little bit of anything else out of it, right? So that would avoid the point of gating well. Now with our attack time, we can hear a little bit more change as we switch that attack time around. Listen for the beater sound on the kick drum, and listen as I turn the attack time slower, that initial snap is gonna go away, or it's not gonna open in time for that initial snap to be heard. Let's take a listen to that. Let me get my release time. So let's turn our attack time super fast. So that's super fast. There's no transient missing there. Let me slow it down and listen to it. So we're just getting the end of it, and you can see I'm having to push up the fader to get enough level out of it because we're only getting that very last part of it when we're gating this slowly. Now let me roll it back the other way so that we can hear that snap come back. So basically it's not there because we've gated everything out of it. Now let me raise my threshold just a little bit more. You can still hear how the snare is bleeding through a little bit and triggering it some too. So let's raise that threshold even more. Now this attack to me might feel a little bit too fast, which sounds weird. If it's not a look ahead, then it can just feel weird the way that it opens so quickly. So hear how there's a little bit of extra little click in there? That's not natural. That's from the waveform of a low frequency suddenly coming open, and that feels weird. So I slow it down a little bit than the absolute fastest that can be on a low frequency instrument like the kick drum. Let me bypass it, because we've kind of been in this a while. Let's hear what it sounds like without it. Hear how the sustain is cut off a little bit more. Let's slow the release time down to see if a little bit more sustain feels better. Maybe we need to reduce the range so that we're not pushing it down so far so that that sustain hangs on a little bit more. We'll see that. This is feeling a little bit more natural. Let me turn it off and see what it's like without it. Now, we would be a little bit foolish to just think of the kick drum by itself, because we have to think about other low frequency instruments like the bass guitar to see how those are matching with it. So if I have the bass guitar, do I really need the sustain on the kick drum? I'm not really sure, so let's listen and check it out. I'm kind of split on this one. I don't really mind it when the gate is off, and I don't really mind it when the gate is on, but it might also depend on how your subs sound, how fast they are at starting and stopping, and there are things that you can feel with a real big sound system that you can't perceive probably on your listening device right now, or it might just change when you're listening in in-ears or headphones too. Now let's go on to the snare drum and hear how we can change the tone of the snare with a gate. Okay, this brings up a point, and I'm going to demonstrate it for you in just a second, but I don't love the way that gates on snares get rid of the little ghost notes and things in between. It bugs me when those things don't come out, and that's one of the things that I like to highlight with compression, is those little ba-da-da-da-da-da kind of things that give it a lot of feeling. We're not just smacking on the 2 and the 4, there's a lot of in-between things going on to really make the rhythm feel a certain way. So I don't love gating on snares, but I'm going to demonstrate it anyway. So we're getting rid of some of the stuff that we might not want, but we're definitely also turning down the stuff that we really do want. And that's my personal preference. Maybe it is for you too. Now there is something fun we can do with the snare bottom mic, especially if we're getting a lot of bleed from the kick drum into the snare bottom mic. We can use a gate on that, but use the snare top mic to trigger the gate on the bottom mic opening. Let me show you how we do that. So over here, I'm going to select my snare bottom, and on my key source, I'm going to try to get this button to work, and I'm going to go to channel 2, right? So channel 2 is the snare, channel 3 is the snare bottom. Now it's going to be looking at just the snare top mic to say, when are we going to open this snare bottom mic? So let me listen to that by itself. So if we wanted it to just get the snare bottom, we could use the top mic to key it. So we've got the source selected there, we're gating it, we can listen to that source, and that would PFL that or send it to the headphones. But then we can turn this on, and then as we roll our threshold up, now we're only getting the snare bottom when the snare is hit hard. If I change the key to be just the input channel or hit none, it can work too. But you can hear the kick drum might also trigger it if we set it at the place where we want it. So if we switch our key back to 2, now, when we add it into the snare top, we can hear how they complement one another. We could take the release time longer. We can make the threshold a little bit lower. Now some of the toms are probably triggering it, so I'm going to raise that threshold a little bit more. And if I wanted the snares to be shorter, I could release that, or make that release time faster. So you can see how we can use it as a tool to tailor the sound of our snare drum and all of its components. Now with the toms, if they're ringing too long, we can use the gate to shorten that note that they're ringing at so that it's there and then it's gone a little bit faster. Let's see if we can do this on the high tom first. So you can hear how it chops off the note a little bit. It gets in, it gets out, nobody gets hurt. We get less cymbals and we get less of the other drums in there, but we get less sustain or ring out of the drum. Maybe that's what you want, maybe it's not. We can turn our release time a little bit longer. Now you heard how that cymbal triggered the gate a little bit. Hit a crash cymbal, it opened up the tom mic a little bit. We could use our key filter to ignore certain parts of the frequency range and highlight only some other parts of the frequency range. So I'm going to turn this to maybe 500. That's going to ignore a lot of the cymbal information. So then our gate is only opening up when that 500 hertz, or I've got a 380 at the moment. It's only going to be looking at that one frequency in order to open up the gate. Let me turn my threshold down a little bit more. Okay, so now we're hearing other drums triggering it as well. If we move that up, then we're not getting those cymbals that are triggering the gate to open as well. So that's a much quieter input when it's not being played, and then it comes through when it is. Let's try it on the low tom just for another demonstration. This tom sounds fantastic and rings just the right amount of time for me, but if you want it shorter, here's what you would do. All right, so we've discovered another thing that I don't like about toms and gates, is that even when you gate the tom properly, the noise that's getting into that microphone is going to open up at the same time when the tom mic opens up. So you get this extra shh in the background as the tom mic opens up, and that bugs me. That's why I don't prefer using it, and that's what I want you to avoid if you can. Let's keep playing around. Now for this one, I'm going to turn the key filter up to a higher frequency so that it's only opening up when the stick attack frequency, around 2 to 5K, is present and triggering that. Because this tom is ringing so long, it's got a lot of low frequencies. If I focus on those, but I'm trying to get rid of that ring, it's going to hang on a little bit longer. So let's try that. So because we've narrowed down this frequency, that frequency goes away a lot faster, right? So our release time needs to be a lot slower in order to really tailor how long we want that drum to last, because that stick attack is there and gone. The ring of the tom hangs on a little bit longer, and we can really tailor how long we want this gate to stay open with our release control. All right, so not a whole lot there. Let's turn our release time down a lot more. Or up. I don't know which direction to tell you. All right, now let me turn it off and see what it sounds like. So it's less droning, which can be cool. See if I can get it to go any longer. Now let's listen to all the drums together with the gates on and then with the gates off and see what we like better. All right, so it's a very different drum sound. There's a lot less cymbal bleed, and it's a lot tighter when we turn on the gates. And that's the kind of sound that you can get. And if that's what you want, and you want that really tight drum sound, go for it. If you want to let a little bit more breathing and a little bit more ringing, you can turn them off. Another thing you might miss though by turning on the gates is that if there's a slow like 8th or 16th note build, then those lower notes are going to be pushed down. They're not going to reach the threshold of the gate. And then suddenly there will be a point in the build when the mics open up and suddenly psh, it's come out, and yeah, that's distracting. We're trying to eliminate and reduce distractions with our soundboard, not create them. Again, it depends on the musical style of your drummer. If they're not playing a lot of ghost notes, if they're just playing really straight ahead, not a lot of nuanced things and not a lot of builds, if it's just kind of like on or off, gates can work awesome. If not, work really hard to get things dialed in at the source with dampening, get your mic placement right, get your cymbals up high so they're farther away from the drum microphones. Do all of that before you go to a gate. Again, it's kind of like what my philosophy with health, and I'm not a health expert or, I don't give health advice, so don't sue me or anything. But if you've got a problem with your health, don't try to solve it with medicine, solve it with diet and exercise. That's my 2 cents. Go work out and have fun messing with your gates. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, mash that thumbs up to help let the algorithm know that you like this stuff and you want more people to see it too. And remember, it's all about the low end. Avoid the sound tech solo and nobody leaves church humming the kick drum. We'll see you back here next time on Attaway Audio.